Well, we've hit a big one. Takahashi Meijin no Bouken Jima, or Adventure Island, is the first action game released on the Famicom that's a real step up from Super Mario Bros., since it was released 364 days prior. It's got more detailed graphics, catchy tunes, fast action, lots of secrets. You can see why it was the next big game on the system, and it wound up selling over 1 million copies in Japan. Of course, the game didn't originally star this caricature of Hudson Soft's best-known employee. The game started life as Wonder Boy, a Westone creation that was published by Sega for arcades. The Wonder Boy family tree is a nasty snarl with 7 distinct series in it, all owned by separate companies. The version that won't take 20 minutes to explain is that Westone owned the game, but Sega owned the name, and Westone sold the game to a lot of people. Hudson replaced the main character, and that's how we got this game. And then Hudson went on to make 12 sequels to their own game without Westone's involvement. We're going to come back to Takahashi Meijin games 4 more times before this project's over with. In fact, the very last Famicom game is Adventure Island 4. So let's start digging into this. Takahashi's girlfriend Tina has been kidnapped by King Kura, so he'll have to trek through 32 stages spread across 8 worlds, each with platforming and action challenges, until he rescues her. Wonder where I've heard something like that before. The A button jumps, and the B button will either throw your item, or if you hold it down, it'll let you run. Boy, this sounds familiar. The key thing to understand in playing Adventure Island is that the bar at the top is not a health bar. It's a timer, and you replenish it by collecting food. There isn't enough time to complete the stage without collecting food on the way, so you'll have to be constantly eating. And the food appears as you get kind of close to it, but then fades away just as quickly. It introduces a tension to the game. Keep going forward and try to complete the level faster, or turn back to get that vegetable you missed. The timer doesn't count down at the same rate on all stages either. On the mountain stages, it goes much faster. Touching anything will kill you in this game, with one exception. The rocks just make you stumble. You can actually take advantage of that in a few places to stumble through some obstacles. You start out only being able to run and jump. To take out enemies, you're going to need a weapon. You'll find these eggs from time to time, and if you're completely unarmed, then the egg contains a stone axe. You can throw these out ahead of you to knock out some enemies. Find the right egg, and you can upgrade the stone axe to a torch. The torch does extra damage, defeating some enemies in one shot that the axe has trouble with, and it can also destroy the rocks. You lose your weapon if you die. Early on, they'll just give you an axe when you restart. On later levels, though, you might have to go quite some time before you get an axe back. Weapons aren't the only thing found in eggs. You can find this fairy that makes you invincible. Or how about a skateboard so that you can never stop moving? It does protect you from one hit, though. To be honest, I always found the skateboard to be more trouble than it's worth in this game. If you find an eggplant in the egg, then the timer rapidly drains away while it follows you. Because if there's one thing that Famicom games teach us, it's that aubergines are evil. The key will let you get to a bonus area. There you bounce between the springs and collect extra fruit. You have to be standing in the right place when you collect the key though, or sometimes nothing happens. The most important thing you can get out of an egg is this. The Hudson Bee. It'll let you continue when you game over by holding any direction on the control pad and pressing start. A lot of times, these eggs are hidden. You can find them by throwing your weapon out, and they'll just hit something that isn't there if there's a hidden egg. Then it's a matter of jumping in the correct spot to make it appear. The Continue Bee is hidden at the very end of the first stage, so if you don't want to be miserable, be sure you jump a bit at the end. At the end of every 4 stages is a boss. You have to jump up and hit him in the head a few times in order to defeat him. Adventure Island is surprisingly difficult. On Game Center CX, when Aurino couldn't beat it, it took his assistant over 24 hours to complete the game. Now I don't think it's that tough, but unless you use that continue code, you're not going to make it very far. I played for about an hour and only made it to the second level of World 3. The thing is, even though the game is really challenging, I also don't think it's unfair. The control scheme is a little bit odd. Takahashi Meijin has a lot of inertia, and that makes fine movement controls a little bit difficult. But at the same time, it feels right. It's not frustrating that he has to get a little run-up in order to jump high, or that you can't really brake to a stop while you're in the air. But it does mean that you have to get a feel for it. In general, it's better to keep moving forward than it is to stop and try to recover. The timing usually works out if you keep going. You'll run under these frogs, for example. For the past year of the Famicom, we've been seeing a lot of people take the wrong lessons from Super Mario Bros. People like finding hidden items, so they make everything in the game hidden items. People like the staggered power-ups, so they have a huge quantity of staggered power-ups. All you really need for a successful game is to jump and throw fireballs. Who cares how it controls? Takahashi Meijin no Bouken Jima feels like the first time that we have a real successor for Super Mario Bros. Yeah, it's not quite as good, but the graphics are a big step up, and it's got catchy music, and it plays really well. I've always been kind of lukewarm on Adventure Island, but in the context of a game that came out 1 year almost to the day after Super Mario Bros., it makes perfect sense. I completely get why kids in 1986 would have gone crazy for this game. I'm going to let you in on a little secret though. I like the sequels even better. Well, not Bugtail Honey. We'll talk about that one later. Okay, you start with Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy forks into Adventure Island. Adventure Island spawns its own series. 2, 3, and 4 are on the Famicom, plus the spin-off Bugtail no Honey. On the PC Engine, there's Takahashi Meijin no Shinbokujima, which in the US is New Adventure Island, and that one will be more confusing in a couple of minutes. The Super Famicom got 2 Super Bouken Jima games. Over on the Game Boy, 2 and 3 on the Famicom got directly ported over there. In Japan they kept the numbering, but in the US they were renumbered to 1 and 2. There's also an enhanced PS2 remake of the original game, plus a WiiWare reboot of the series. Weststone's second Wonder Boy game was Wonder Boy in Monsterland. That was a launch title for the PC Engine as Bikuraman World. In Brazil it became Mônica no Castelo do Dragão, and yes, my Portuguese is even worse than my Japanese. While on the Famicom it became Sayuki World, which spawned its own series. Sayuki World 2 was its own game, and that forked again into Wampum in the US. Back to the main line with the first Wonder Boy 3 game, that's right, there's more than one of them, Monster Lair. The PC Engine CD-ROM version of the game was the simplest fork ever, as all they did was change the sprite of the main character and dropped Wonder Boy from the title, still calling it Monster Lair. The other Wonder Boy 3 game was The Dragon's Trap. On the PC Engine, Hudson released Dragon's Trap as Adventure Island, because why should any of this be simple? While over in Brazil it became Turma de Mônica o Resgate. Of course, Dragon's Trap got a remake, and that remake spawned its own sequel, Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom, because the Wonder Boy series didn't have enough things growing off of it. After that came Wonder Boy in Monster World, which also got split off in Brazil as Turma de Mônica na Terra dos Monstros. Brazilian viewers, I'm done torturing your language. On the PC Engine, this one became Dynastic Hero. Then the 6th game in the Wonder Boy series was called Monster World 4. Sega had finally worked out the trick of owning both the name and the game at this point, so people weren't making ports of it with replaced graphics. It never ends though, and a remake has been announced for this one. And that's why you can't talk about Wonder Boy without going cross-eyed.